Hi everyone, I'm Mike and this is the Sunday Art Show. This week we're going to be looking at Sky Art's Portrait Artist of the Week again, and we're up to week 8, and this week's sitter is English rapper Professor Green. So I'm starting out by working from some screenshots from the Facebook Live session and doing some quick monochrome sketches. So what I'm going to use is a cool grey alcohol-based pro marker by Winsor and Newton. So this has got a fine line tip and it's also got the wedge tip here on the end as well. Now using this type of marker we can apply an even coverage and build up tone gradually by overlaying different marks. On to the second pose now, and the idea of these sketches is to spend around about 10 minutes or so on each one, and by looking at the sitter from different angles my hope is that I get to know his face, his posture, his expressions reasonably well. And I really like working with this alcohol based marker. It's a nice way to build up gradual greys. Now having said that, I've now switched to a ballpoint pen or a biro. And what I'm going to do in a moment is combine that with the alcohol-based markers. Now I'm doing my sketches of Professor Green on mixed media paper, and that's what I've got here. But if I apply the alcohol-based marker over the top, you can see if you work quickly, it can cause the ink to bleed a little bit, and that can give a nice, interesting effect. It just kind of enhances the biro line somewhat, I feel, and makes it a little bit richer. But the effect is perhaps more pronounced if we go onto just cheaper paper. So in particular for the blue, you can see that's bled more than the magenta, and the red is somewhere in between. But I've used this technique for other sketches in the past, and I really like the effect. It's subtle, but to my mind it really enhances the biro line in an attractive way. So on to the next pose. And again, working fairly quickly with the biro. I mean, obviously the footage is speeded up, but as I said, I'm taking no more than 10 minutes or so per sketch. And because of that, the likeness in some of these sketches is rather better than in others. But that's all right. It's a quick experiment. And using the biro combined with the alcohol-based marker, it's a really nice way to work. Now, I showed the effect of the alcohol-based marker on some different coloured inks in that little clip. My personal favourite is to use blue ballpoint pen, because I think the blue ink combined with the grey alcohol-based marker, I don't know, there's just something about that blue-grey combo that I like. So I've actually gone back to the second sketch that I did with the alcohol-based marker, and now I'm coming with biro over the top. So one of the things I really enjoy experimenting with if I'm taking a mixed media approach is a layered effect. So, obviously I did biro first and then the marker on top, but there's no reason you can't do marker then biro, and as I'm doing here, then do the marker on top again for the third layer. And the transparency of the marker, I think it makes it quite forgiving in terms of the way we sketch. So you can have a bit of life to your sketches. You don't have to worry too much about getting it exactly right first time. It's pretty close to painting, really, in many ways. It's pretty close to using watercolour or something like that. One of the things that I've noticed in doing all these different weeks of portraits is that some weeks, I'll maybe spend a little over an hour in total painting the sitter. Other times I spend much more time for no particular reason really. Just I guess it's just what's going on with me on the day, or the different techniques I'm using and so on. So I think I probably ended up spending around about 5 hours in total. I did about an hour on these multiple sketches. This is one of my favourites, by the way. I think I've really caught something of Professor Green there. So about an hour on the sketches in total, so roughly 6 or 7 sketches I think. And then the painting itself took about 4 hours for some reason. It just took me a long time to kind of bring it to resolution. Rest assured I'm not going to take you through the full 4-hour painting, but I do show the painting later in this video in time-lapse mode, and I'll talk about the techniques I used there. Again, not the best likeness in the world on this particular sketch, but I feel I've captured something of his expression. This particular technique, though, I think is really good if you're out in the field, if you're working out in the fresh air, down at the coast or out on the moor, sketching animals or whatever, and you want to very quickly capture a little bit more info than you could perhaps with just a ballpoint pen or a pencil. What I'm trying to do here is stay fairly loose as I sketch with the biro. So you can see that I've got the end of the biro in the palm of my hand. I'm holding it as if it was a brush. What I'm hoping is I'm gradually loosening up as I go from sketch to sketch. Now the very first sketch I did, I didn't add any biro at all, and I actually decided just to leave that one as the pure marker. So that's the other thing, just because you set out to use a mixed media approach, sometimes the initial marks you put down, they're enough. And even if sometimes you just sort of create a nice drawing with just a few marks, and it's nice to kind of preserve that and not worry too much about reaching the end goal you had in mind initially, and just sort of realising you've had a nice moment there, captured something on the page, and just kind of leave it as it is. But this particular one, you can see I'm working up in rather more detail. And again, I've captured quite a powerful emotion of a human being there, I think. But for the painting, decided to go back to the pose I just showed, and I started out in a rather unusual way. So this is normal acrylic ultramarine blue as the base layer, and I've just put down the iridescent metallic blue, so you can see as we change our viewing angle, the underlying image goes from almost invisible here to what I just showed you, where it really came to life in that metallic way. And now I'm coming in over the top of that with my conventional acrylic paints. So the idea here is to do my underpainting with the conventional acrylic. And my plan was that some little bits of the shimmering iridescent acrylic will still show through through the finished painting. I'll come on to that in a moment. But here I'm just gradually building up the flesh tones for Professor Green. So started out with the lightest tone, and then gradually darkening. And you can see there's the idea. So you can see the eyes. It's kind of a little bit ominous and perhaps a bit almost horrific, but you can see the eyes coming to life there as the iridescence catches the light. Now here's an example of a painting. This one's called Heather Bed, and this is an example of a painting where it's apparently conventional. So there are 3 cattle here bedded down in amongst the heather and gorse on Dartmoor. And if I change the angle of viewing under normal lighting conditions, then you can see there's not that much difference really. Okay, but if I change the lighting, and depending on the lighting conditions or the angle at which you're viewing different parts of the painting, you can see there's little bursts of blue coming through on the hide of the cattle here, and it's a reasonably subtle effect. That's the idea. I don't want this to be sort of a gimmick painting, but you can see there's kind of a glow in the sky, and it just kind of depends on the angle and the lighting. So what you end up with is an original painting that kind of changes a little bit, And you see there's a little bit of glow coming through here on this animal and on the others, as I mentioned earlier. So it's something which is truly unique and ever-changing, and I felt that kind of mirrored the ever-changing weather conditions on Dartmoor. And also, of course, you can buy a print of a painting, but the print can't replicate this unique iridescent effect. So on the painting that I just showed you, the animal and landscape painting, as you walk past it, when the light is dimming and it's perhaps evening or early morning, it sometimes looks as if it's almost raining on the distant hills in the background. And that was the idea for this one here, not to have rain, but as I'm showing now, the idea was to hopefully, when I had my finished painting for a portrait, obviously not to have changing weather conditions, but to have perhaps a slightly changing expression, as just a little bit of the iridescence showed through in the finished painting. Now, as it happened, that didn't work out at all, because what happened is the more I worked on this, the more I kind of found I needed to cover things up. And I feel the iridescent underlayer technique, for me, it doesn't work quite as well if I kind of plan it out. So the whole point of it is to have something which is kind of organic and happens at random. And that's what happened with the animal and landscape painting. So as I say, for this particular portrait, I gave it a try. The underlying iridescence effect ended up being completely covered up because of the way I worked. But nevertheless, it's a worthwhile technique mentioning, I felt. So, it's something I might try again at some point in the future. So while I was chatting away there, I added some patches of sort of yellowy green to the dark background, as you can see. And the idea here was that these very loosely mimicked the background in my screenshot. We'll come back to that in a moment. But as I was chatting there, I've been working my way around the head, gradually refining the tone and the shapes I've got. And the other key technique I'm using here is that, having put down my underlayer with conventional acrylic, what I'm doing now is using my interactive acrylics on top. And this is an absolutely lovely technique to use, because the conventional acrylic is completely waterproof once dry, and it dries very quickly. When you've put that down, putting the interactives on top, which you can reactivate by spraying them with water, so even when they're touch dry, you can spray them with water to re-blend them or lift them off the surface of the painting. But the underlying dry conventional acrylic is so smooth and slick a surface, it really is a delight to paint on. And I absolutely love this technique for that reason. It's really good fun. So what I'm doing here is I'm just refining my drawing with a fairly small brush, even though I've done quite a lot of painting and blending. Just coming back into the face and refining the shape of the edge of the face and the features with a small brush, and then I can apply my more painterly approach over the top of that. What I found interesting as well over the weeks is Portrait Artist of the Week has reminded me what a subtle art capturing a likeness is. So there are some people, for some reason, when I go to sketch them, often in 3 or 4 lines I can just capture their likeness and you think, oh, I've got them. Other times, it's trickier for whatever reason. And that I've really enjoyed kind of re-honing my skills. It's been really educational for me and a really good little adventure as well. So you can see here, for example, look, I've just obliterated the right-hand eye. And that's one of the great things, actually, by using the conventional acrylic underneath the interactive acrylic. Let's say you've done quite a well-modelled underpainting with your conventional acrylic, and then you apply the interactives on top, and the interactive bit goes wrong because you've got a bit of the detail wrong. Well, you can just spray the interactive paint, wipe it off with a paper towel, and your underlying conventional acrylic painting will be completely preserved. So it's really good because you kind of get some solid work down in the initial stages, and you've kind of saved that. That's safe. And then you're free to experiment on top. So that's another reason I really love that technique. It's really good fun. Now for this particular portrait, you can see that I haven't really followed the colour scheme of the screenshot at all. you know, I kind of just did my own thing here. And that's one of the things I enjoy doing quite a lot, actually, whether I'm painting animals or painting people, is just being inspired by the colours I see, but adding my own twist to them. So I'm taking quite a lot of care around the eyes here, using a fairly small brush, even though I'm working on quite a large scale, because what I found was that in order to capture the particular look Professor Green had in his eyes, I really just needed to look very carefully at the detail and the shapes of the eyelids and so on. Lips as well are another key region. The mouth is obviously very expressive, and interestingly as well, the shape of the nostrils as well can often be quite key to capturing the likeness. Now I decided to pretty much remove, or in fact I end up entirely removing those highlights in the background. And I don't know whether it was a subconscious thing, but I put a dark green background in there. And of course the guy's called Professor Green, but that wasn't a conscious decision on my part. So now when it comes to his tattoo, he's got an ornate tattoo which says the word lucky on his neck. So I started to put that in with watercolour marker you just saw. Didn't like the way I did it. Wiped it off with a paper towel. But now I'm coming in with the brush because I decided I don't want to just follow slavishly his tattoo and try and copy the intricate line work. I just wanted to hint at it, so that's why I took a rather more impressionist approach with a rather chunky brush, rather than sort of go to, get all fiddly and try and copy out the tattoo artist's work exactly. That's not really what I'm trying to do with my portrait work. The other great thing with the interactive acrylics is it's really easy to glaze with them. So you can see I put kind of a unifying glaze over the right hand side of the face there. And now I'm coming back in and just enhancing some of the colourful highlights that I had earlier. And there's our finished painting. Not the best likeness I've ever achieved, but I do feel it's a very powerful painting, so I'm pretty happy with that one. So I hope you enjoyed this rather information-packed video. Lots of different techniques in this one. As always, do feel free to ask me a question in the comments below if you've got any queries. Very happy to answer any questions. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. And I hope to see you next Sunday for the next episode of the Sunday Art Show. Thanks very much for watching.